It's time for Eric G's Pro Tips.
All right, guys, today I'm going to show you my secrets for finishing drywall, really getting it taped and mudded. And this is a pretty big project, but it takes simple tools and a little patience to get it done. The first thing I'm going to do right here is go around and make sure that I've got all my screws recessed just slightly. The problem with this, if you go too deep, you tear through the paper and that's not really going to hold anything. But like this one here, if it's too high, it's going to get in the way of the mud. So we want to go through and make sure that we sink these all in, get them down. And if you could feel the screw, sink it a little bit more. Doesn't take much. And that way, we're good to go. Like that one there, it's a little high. You want to come in. That one's a little stripped. There we go. Didn't take much. All right, we're good to go. So the first thing I'm going to do is just go around and hit these screw holes with a little sheetrock mud. It's easy if you get it just pre-mixed. Just going to go through and hit these areas here just with a putty knife. Now remember, the big trick here is not to put too much on. You're just going to end up sanding it off later, and that's more work. So we're just going to go through and kind of hit these, keep it nice and thin so we don't have to worry about it. Now, as far as taping goes, we've got a situation here on the outsides of a 4x8 or a 4x12 piece of sheetrock. We have these tapers on two of the long sides of it. This sheetrock comes and it tapers back in, which is great for doing seams. But I wanted to show you the difference here between a raw edge and that taper so you can see how much this gives you room for mud and tape. And so this can be a challenge when you've got a taper here and of course a flat spot here, because as we add mud, it's going to add a little bit of bow to this wall. So I'm going to show you kind of how I do this. First off, I'm going to get my utility knife. I'm going to come in here with some tape. This is just dry paper. We're good to go. And the next thing I do here is I grab some sheetrock mud and I actually put it up on the wall here first. So what I'm going to do is just go right up here. It's going to fall down. Make sure you get your floor taped off. This is a messy process. So if you've got carpet or anything there, I'm just going to basically load this up here and get it all along this edge, because this is kind of the secret to setting the tape. If you have a dry spot under the tape, it's going to bubble up and it's going to show, and you're going to fight it later, have to cut out, come back and fix it. That's just more work. Now the thing with any time you're doing sheetrock mud like this from raw drywall, you're probably going to have to do 3 or 4 coats as we go. And if it's moist outside, like after a rainy day where you're doing a lot of it, it could take days to dry. So give yourself a week or so for this process to go from start to finish. So I'll clean my putty knife off here. And I just set that in. We want to kind of put that 50% over each edge. Like I said, this is kind of the hardest one here because we've got the high side and the low side. So now I'm just going to kind of press this in and get that evenly pressed in the mud there. I'm going to go over it one more time to make sure I got it. I can see that I'm getting it deeper in there because you can see that I've got a little line right there. You can pull it back with your other hand. Now we've got that set in there. I don't have any bubbles. So the next thing I'm going to do is go right back over the top of this with some sheetrock mud again. We want to get this fully embedded in here. And again, if we put too much on here, we're going to sand it off later. So be diligent in working clean on the wall. All right, so we're going to pretend this is nice and dry. The secret to this is getting this wide enough so you don't see it on the wall if you've got the sun hitting it or a texture or even a flat wall surface. So we're going to the next size knife here. I like to go to a 6 and then almost out to a 9 or 12 inch to really spread this out so we have a nice wide area to work with. So the next step is I'll come up here, start going with a wider knife, and really start to get this widened out. All right. So what we'll do is let this dry for another day or so, light sand, and then we go to our 12-inch or 9-inch knife, depending on what you've got. But this is the secret to getting this flat. You always want to work with it here, because if I come down this way, I'm going to highlight that little bump in there. So you want to have the knife always working with the joint. All right, so after this dries, we'll go ahead and sand that down. A little bit of primer, a little bit of texture, and it's good to go. And that's how you mud and tape drywall.